Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 46. Entering Seven Wind Mountains. The Seven Wind Mountains encompassed a very wide area. From east to west, they spanned close to 1,000 miles, while from south to north, they covered close to 400 miles. It was the largest mountain range in the northern region of Rain Country. There were many demonic beasts inhabiting the mountain range, and there was also a large variety of different spiritual medicine growing here. Sometimes, some precious metals that could be used to forge high-grade weapons were also discovered here. As a result, there were many who entered here for training trips, as well as many whose target were the numerous treasures in this place. However, the annual death toll amongst those who entered the mountains here was also very high. Some died under the fangs of demonic beasts. Some died because of some dangerous environment they found themselves in, while there were also some who were killed by their fellow human beings. Although no one had actually counted the numbers, most believed over half of the deaths that occurred in Seven Wind Mountains was due to being murdered by other humans. Therefore, the most dangerous existence within Seven Wind Mountains was not any kind of demonic beast, but man. A day later, Ling Han and Yutong arrived at Yellow Bridge Town. From here, they could directly enter the mountain range. Because the journey this time round was quite far, they had traveled here on horseback. The two of them stayed one night in an inn in the town, and subsequently left their horses at that inn before setting out towards the mountain range with only a simple bundle on their backs. If they were unable to return within a month, then the inn had the right to sell off their horses. The money earned from the sale would cover the payment to the inn for holding onto their horses for a month. The early morning sun hung high in the sky, its rays shining on the still remaining dewdrops, reflecting a variety of exceptionally beautiful colors and thus presenting a scene full of life. This was a wild, primitive, colossal mountain range. Although there were many people exploring the depths of the mountain range every single day, compared to this gigantic mountain range, the large number of visitors was really insignificant. As Ling Han and Yutong breathed in the fresh air around them, they both experienced an indefinable sense of relaxation. They traveled all over the mountain range in search of the rock cave that had been mentioned in the rumors. However, they had searched for 5 days, and although they did find many caves, all the caves they found only led to disappointment. That was reasonable, though if that cave could be so easily found, then wouldn't it have long been discovered by others? Ling Han's steps suddenly paused. He heard some sounds of battle. "Let's go take a look," he said. This was his second life, yet he still could not change his curious nature. They followed the sounds and quickly arrived at the bank of a little brook. In the clearing some distance in front of them, there were two groups of people who were currently engaged in a deadly battle. This is really a small world. Ling Han shook his head. He knew one of the parties that were currently fighting. They were Ludong, Chen Pengju, Zhu Zuyi and the others. They had joined forces previously at Balance Mountain to obtain the green spiritual fruit. However, as Hangzhan's incident happened soon after, the 5 of them were also scared off. He never thought he would see them again here. Out of the group of 5, Ludong, Li Hao and Zhu Zuyi had all broken through to element gathering tier, while Chen Pengju and Zhou Chang had also progressed to the 9th layer of body refining tier. Their improvement was very evident. After all, they had each respectively gotten 1 green spiritual fruit. Yet, though their side had 3 elite martial artists in element gathering tier, they were still at a disadvantage as the other side had 4 martial artists in element gathering tier. 3 against 4, they were at a disadvantage in numbers, added to the fact that they had just broken through to element gathering tier and thus their power was still quite weak. If it was not for the fact that their opponents seemed to want to capture them alive, they would have long been finished. "Why won't you quickly surrender to avoid suffering too much?" one of their opponents said. There were 4 members in the other party, and all of them possessed a fierce look to them. It was obvious that they have had a lot of experience in this area, and were filled with killing intent. Ludong and his group made no answer, but continued to keep up their defenses. In the past, the strongest one of the group of 5 was Li Hao. It was no different now. He brandished his saber repeatedly, every wave undaunted by the gap in power between the two groups. Each slash of his saber had an air of determination to it. It was also thanks to his presence that the group of 5 managed to hold on until now. Yet he had also attracted the concentrated attention of 2 of their opponents. "Pooh-pooh," With 2 powerful blows, 2 wounds appeared on his chest and back respectively, and blood splattered. Li Hao gave a loud roar and his eyes turned blood red, revealing an increasingly maniacal air, as if there was something about to explode from within him. Ling Han could not help exclaiming softly in surprise. "What is it?" Lu Yutong asked. A battle at this level naturally did not deserve her full attention. "That guy is really quite talented, he's almost able to form saber chi," Ling Han said, pointing at Li Hao. Saber chi. Lu Yutong could not help being shocked. Whatever chi it was, this kind of power was very difficult to form. However, it was common sense for many elite martial artists that under extreme emotional pressure, it would be much easier to form chi. For example, extreme joy or grief, or perhaps endless slaughter, or maybe the depths of despair. However, she had always possessed an icy demeanor, so she had never experienced such extremes of the emotional spectrum. As a result, she has not managed to form sword chi. According to her knowledge, that elder in her clan had managed to form sword chi due to the great grief he experienced after his wife had died of an illness. Now Li Hao had actually reached the point where he was close to forming saber chi. So how could she not be both shocked and envious? Ling Han smiled, and said, "You don't have to be discouraged. With my careful guidance, you two will very quickly be able to form sword chi. This isn't anything difficult." To him, the difficulty was in forming sword ray, while grasping sword heart was the real challenge. "Isn't anything difficult?" Lu Yutong almost rolled her eyes in response. In the whole of Rain Country, how many people had actually managed to form chi? Even in her Lu clan, there were only 7 clansmen who had managed such a feat. Ling Han smiled. This girl naturally had no idea how colossal the East Star was. The strongest warriors of Rain Country were possibly only in Flower Blossom tier. Rain Country could be considered a backwater place. In the wider world, there were innumerable geniuses. There would definitely be no small number of those who had managed to form ray, and even heart. "Are you not going to help him?" Lu Yutong could not hold back from asking. This is that guy's rare opportunity. If he is unable to form saber chi through this experience, then the next time he gets this kind of chance will be maybe 5 years, or even 10 years later, Ling Han said, shaking his head. Let him face a bit more pressure. Lu Yutong frowned slightly. She did not have such an optimistic opinion of Li Hao. It was possible for him to be killed at any moment under the violent, relentless attacks of the enemies rather than form saber chi. Don't underestimate the will and determination of human beings. Under extreme pressure, there is a possibility one will erupt with inconceivable power. Ling Han smiled. He could not help remembering that in his last life, he had really been overprotected. Concocting and taking medicine allowed him to easily progress through the tiers. It was when he started to travel all over the world in search of ancient sites that he realized that he had such a weak grasp of his own actual battle prowess. The dangers and perils of all the ancient sites he visited also managed to forge his strong determination and willpower, as well as increase his combat experience. It was only from then onwards that he could really be considered as a powerful warrior. Sure. A bright flash of the saber streaked across the air, as if proving Ling Han's words. Li Hao, who had initially been forced into a dangerous corner, actually displayed a surprising saber skill. What was even more surprising was that there was actually an accompanying flash at the same time the saber was brandished. It looked as if he had brandished 2 sabers at the same time. He had not brandished 2 sabers. The second flash of saber was saber chi. Pooh. None of those fighting could have imagined that Li Hao would have been able to display a flash of saber chi. One of his opponents had received the blow, and as the saber chi streaked across, blood immediately spilled from a wound on the other's left shoulder. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 47, Clues. Good. The morale of Lu Dong and the other 3 was uplifted by this strike, yet Li Hao's figure staggered. His origin power had long neared the point of complete exhaustion. This last slash was, in reality, merely his despair and rage he unleashed. He had never imagined that he would actually form saber chi in this attack. But he was no longer able to continue the battle. His right hand dropped to his side, and the saber almost slipped from his fingers. Boss, this brat can actually form saber chi, we definitely can't let him live. One of the enemies immediately shouted. The boss of these 4 people was a large man with deep brows who had 2 missing fingers on his left hand. He nodded and said, "This brat will become a big trouble for us in future. Just kill him then. We'll just have less money to extort. Hee. Just add a little bit more extortion money for the other 4 cash cows. It should be enough to cover for this guy's share. Maybe his corpse would be worth a few coins." The 4 of them talked amongst themselves. Although they had initially been shocked by the flash of saber Li Hao had revealed, they very quickly regained their composure. After all, in this battle, they possessed an absolute advantage in terms of power. "Flee. I'll cover your retreat, guys," Li Hao said deeply, using all his strength to raise the saber he was still holding, his gaze determined. "TSK, TSK, TSK. The power of love is truly great," Ling Han clicked his tongue in praise. From their previous encounter, he could already tell that Li Hao liked Zhu Yi. The reason he had been able to form a flash of saber chi just now, it likely was because he was worried that the object of his feelings would be hurt and suffer, leading to an extreme emotional upheaval. Of course, extreme emotional upheavals were not a requirement for forming chi. However, under such conditions, humans are often able to fully realize their potential, thus some who had enough talent would be able to form chi. "Now, can you make your move?" Lu Yutong rolled her eyes at him again. She kept feeling that this guy's actions were always much too mature, not a bit like those of a typical 16-year-old. Ling Han gave a long whistle, and leaped out. Ling Han. When Lu Dong and his group saw him, their expressions were first of joy, yet quickly followed by disappointment. It was because, during their past encounter, Ling Han had only been in the 7th layer of body refining tier. From then until now, only 2 months had passed. How could it be possible that Ling Han had broken through to element gathering tier within a brief 2 months period? If that was so, then even if he was now in the 9th layer of body refining tier, he would still be unable to battle with a martial artist in the 1st layer of element gathering tier on even terms. This was the ironclad rule of martial arts. They looked around once again, hoping to discover another's figure. Lu Yutong was an elite martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. If she was here, then they'd all be saved. AI. Ling Han gave a deliberate sigh, and said, "The looks on your faces now make me very sad." "Brat, who do you think you are?" The enemy's boss that had missing fingers shouted at Ling Han. His gaze was wavering as he did not know Ling Han's prowess, but judging from the fact that Ling Han only seemed to be about 16 or 17 years old, there was no way that he would be too powerful, right? "I'm Ling Han, son of the Ling clan's clan head from Grey Cloud Town," Ling Han introduced himself. "Boss, we've got another cash cow here," one of the lackeys said. The boss with missing fingers laughed wickedly. In his opinion, Ling Han had to be one of those spoiled young masters who had an exaggerated idea of their own abilities and no idea of the perils of the real world. Thinking in this manner, he naturally would not take Ling Han seriously, and said, "You brat are really quite nice to especially deliver money to us, why don't you quickly come here and surrender obediently?" Ha 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 ha. His group of 4 laughed raucously. Ling Han was all smiles, and said, "I don't think the 4 of you are nice at all. Why don't you obediently extend your necks and I'll gift each one of you with a slash." What a self-important brat. The kind of person I hate the most is this type of spoiled young master. One of the lackeys pounced at Ling Han while brandishing a large cleaver in a slash aimed at Ling Han's head. "Old 4. Don't be too merciless, that's a cash cow there," the boss with missing fingers reminded. "Hee. I'm just going to cut off this brat's arms," Old 4 said, and when the large cleaver lowered, the blade came down at a slight angle and, indeed, it was aiming at Ling Han's arm. Ling Han drew his sword. Ziu! The sword flashed, and the cleaver flew high up into the air while that man called Old 4 was also forced to fly backwards due to the shockwave from Ling Han's parry. But he had just flown back some distance when his head separated from his neck, and a gushing stream of hot blood sprayed out. What? Seeing this, the other 3 bandits were dumbstruck. Lu Dong and his group were also shocked numb. Was this really Ling Han? 2 months ago, this guy was just in the 7th layer of body refining tier, yet now. That Old 4 had to be at least in the 2nd layer, or even 3rd, of element gathering tier, and his individual strength could overwhelm him easily. Yet he was killed in one strike by Ling Han. What kind of disparity was that? Since Ling Han had drawn his sword, there was no way he would be merciful. His figure moved sharply and charged towards the boss with missing fingers and his two other fellows. Old Four must have been too careless. That's right, he's just a little brat, how strong could he be? Let's kill him to avenge Old Four. The three of them pounced while brandishing their respective weapons, and as their blades waved about wildly, they created a big commotion. Unfortunately, in front of Ling Han, they were all much too weak. Out of the group of three, aside from their boss with missing fingers who was in the third layer of element gathering tier, the other two were both in the second layer. In front of Ling Han, whose prowess was comparable to that of a martial artist in the fifth layer of element gathering tier, what could they do? This was the constraint of a difference in stages. Any martial artist would know very well how big the gulf between the power of one stage and the next one was. 1. Ling Han didn't even have to use sword chi. He did not need to use shocking electricity sword arts either. Taking all opportunities provided by the gaps in their defenses, shua, he instantly killed them one bandit with each strike. The boss with missing fingers didn't even get a chance to beg for mercy before the whole group was completely obliterated by Ling Han. Lu Dong and his group felt like they were dreaming. They exhausted all means available and only managed to survive for over half a day against the boss with missing fingers and his lackeys, and that was mostly due to the fact that they had wanted to capture Lu Dong and his group alive for extortion. But what did Ling Han do? He killed them, one enemy with one strike, as if it was a piece of cake. In the past, there indeed had already been a gap between their battle prowess, but how could it have become so colossal? Ling Han, no. Big brother Ling, thank you. It's really thanks to you, otherwise, we would have been in deep trouble. They were stunned for a moment before hurriedly gathering around Ling Han to thank him. Ling Han smiled and exchanged pleasantries with them. Lu Yutong also came out from behind the bushes, and the atmosphere quickly became lively. Why are you guys here? Ling Han asked. This Seven Wind Mountains was extremely dangerous. If it wasn't for the fact that there was earth dragon grass and a red-scaled dragon snake here, he wouldn't even consider coming to this place. After all, who could guarantee that the demonic beasts in spiritual ocean tier wouldn't suddenly feel like taking a walk around the territories of weak demonic beasts? The Da Yuan tournament is going to begin very soon, and so we wanted to do as much as we could to increase our individual abilities. We came here to see if we might be lucky enough to pick some spiritual medicine growing all over the place here, Chen Pengju said. Ling Han could not hold back a loud laugh and said, are you guys perhaps thinking that just because you discovered a plant of green spiritual fruits back at Balance Mountain, the heavens are looking favorably on you and you'd also be able to get a large haul here? Lu Dong and his group looked embarrassed. Zhu Ziyi pouted, and said, don't remind us. We're really very unlucky this time. Not only did we not find any spiritual medicine, we had even accidentally fallen into a cave that had heavy yin qi. There were bones, human and animal alike, littered all over the place. Ling Han started. It couldn't be that these five guys had coincidentally fallen into the cave the red-scaled dragon snake inhabited, right? If that was true, then their luck was indeed extraordinarily good. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 48. Den of the Great Snake. Where is that cave? Ling Han asked. Wait, you want to go to that demonic place? Lu Dong immediately shouted. Ling Han smiled softly and said, aren't you guys here to search for a fateful encounter? There could be one at that place. Oh, that's right, you guys probably didn't venture too deeply into that cave, right? Of course not. There were bones all over the place. It looked like a mass grave. Once we saw it, we fled. As a girl, Zhu Ziyi naturally need not fear that saying such words would make Ling Han laugh at him. You guys are really fortunate, Ling Han nodded. Had these guys been even slightly more curious and ventured deeper into the cave to see what kind of creature had devoured these people and animals, they would have very likely never come out. Is there really a great opportunity there? Cheng Pengju asked a bit expectantly. Currently, only he and Zhou Chang had not yet broken through to element gathering tier. Possibly, Ling Han nodded. That cave could be the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake, or possibly some other kind of savage demonic beast. As he had not yet seen it with his own eyes, it was difficult to make an accurate guess. When he saw the eagerness displayed on the faces of the five of them, he said, however, great opportunities usually go hand in hand with great danger. You guys need to think it over carefully. The four of them exchanged looks and, after a while, they finally said, we'll at least take you to that cave for now. The group set off on their path, and Ling Han said to Li Hao, congratulations, now that you've formed saber chi, you can be considered to have finally stepped onto the first step of the path of a saber wielder. Saber chi. When Ling Han said this, Lu Dong and the others were reminded that Li Hao's last attack had actually managed to form a flash of saber chi. Lu Dong, Chen Pengju and Zhou Chang were uncontrollably envious, while Zhu Zuyi's face was filled with joy. Li Hao laughed in a simple manner. Before he had even begun his path of cultivation, he had already been practicing saber skills. He had immersed himself in the path of the saber for 13 years, and his deepest desire was to be able to form saber chi. Unfortunately, he had never managed to do so. He had never thought that this would have been a blessing in disguise, allowing him to form saber chi in such dangerous circumstances. From now onwards, his path of martial arts would definitely be bright beyond imagination. It could even be said that even if he went to Huyang Academy and showed off his saber chi there, he'd definitely be gladly welcomed as a disciple. Big brother Ling, let's have a spar. Li Hao could not help feeling his fighting spirit rise. However, you're not allowed to use your full abilities. Otherwise, your power would be much too strong. Ling Han neither agreed nor rejected. He simply drew his sword and gave it a light wave. Shua! 2 flashes of sword chi appeared in a dance. Li Hao instantly opened his mouth in a daze. After a while, he finally shook his head and said, I'll never compare myself with a freak like you again. That's right. This guy is a true freak. To compare yourself with him is practically looking for trouble. Lu Dong and the other 3 said respectively, all of them completely convinced by Ling Han's absolute prowess. Yet Ling Han was not so easily satisfied. Sword chi was only the first step on the path of the sword. There was still sword ray and sword heart after that. In his last life, out of the 7 ultimate warriors of heaven tier, one of them had been the most esteemed existence of sword arts. He began practicing with the sword at 7 years old, forming sword chi at 10, forming sword heart when he was 17, and finally forming sword heart at the age of 33. He was truly a grandmaster of sword arts. His first life was done and over with. He had placed all his attention on the path of alchemy, and became an alchemy emperor, someone who had never appeared in the books of history and likely never would again. He was a competitive man. Since he had already decided to concentrate on the path of martial arts in this life, then he wanted to also become a true emperor of martial arts. Da Yuan City was too small, and Rain Country itself was also too small, thus even those who had only managed to form sword or saber chi would be praised as exceptional geniuses. They were not too far away from that cave. Thus, after half an hour, they arrived at the face of a cliff, which was covered with damp moss. Because the cliff was facing away from light, they appeared to look dark green in color. It's there, Zhu Zuyi said, pointing at one corner of the cliff. Ling Han glanced over and saw that there was a very inconspicuous cave entrance there. If Zhu Zuyi had not deliberately pointed it out to him, he would have definitely missed it. You guys wait here, I'll go take a look. He took a great leap and entered into the cave. The environment here was extremely damp, and the ground slippery. If he wasn't careful, he might slip and slide all the way to the bottom of the cave. He cautiously advanced, observing his surroundings carefully and paying attention to any traces or clues. Soon he arrived at the bottom of the cave and discovered a gigantic cavern. There were bones everywhere, and just as Zhu Zuyi had described, they were bones of both humans and demonic beasts. They were giving out a rotting stench. If anyone else had seen such a scene, he'd probably turn right around and flee back to wherever he came from. Ling Han searched carefully and soon, among the pile of bones, discovered a crimson scale. It's indeed the red-scaled dragon snake. He could finally confirm it. He began searching again and eventually discovered a passage at one of the corners of the cavern. The passage's ceiling was only as tall as a normal man's height, and it was also only wide enough to permit one person to enter at a time. A more powerful rotting stench was continuously wafting from within it. That big guy should be sleeping inside. Ling Han took a look at the scale in his hand. Judging from its size, it definitely came from a mature red-scaled dragon snake. He bent it, but the scale did not split in half. Indeed, red-scaled dragon snake has a thread of dragon blood in their line. That's why their scales would be so tough. Otherwise, demonic beasts in element gathering tier definitely could not possess such a powerful defense. He retreated out of the cave, brought Yutong and the others to a place farther away and said, "That cave is the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake." Red-scaled dragon snake. Yutong and his group were shocked. The red-scaled dragon snake was a demonic beast in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Furthermore, it was much stronger than any ordinary demonic beast in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. It definitely deserved the name of the Beast King amongst demonic beasts of element gathering tier. The inner core of the dragon snake can be used to concoct transcending origin pill. 1 pill will allow the user to increase his own cultivation level by 1 layer. However, it is only effective for martial artists whose cultivation levels is below the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han revealed the benefits first, then he said, "How about it? Do you guys still want to continue?" Yutong and his group all looked hesitant. On one hand, they all craved for greater power, but on the other hand, the red-scaled dragon snake was not an easy opponent. If they weren't careful, they not only wouldn't be able to obtain the beast's inner core, but also become the prey of the great snake, and their bones would join the ever-increasing pile in the cave. Ling Han only looked at him with a soft smile. In truth, since he dared to venture here, then of course he was certain of his ability to handle the red-scaled dragon snake. This was his test for the 5 of them. Because these 5 people had led him to the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake, he wanted to reward them with a big gift. However, this would depend on whether or not they had the courage to obtain this opportunity. The expressions on the 5 of them very quickly turned into determined looks, and they said, "Let's do it. If we can manage to reach the 4th layer of element gathering tier, then we would have a chance of squeezing into the top 10 participants of the tournament at the end of the year. We'd be able to enter Huyang Academy then. We have to take the risk." Ling Han nodded, and said, "No regrets. We definitely will not regret it." The 5 of them said loudly in unison. "All right, then here's a mission for you. Go catch a bright wool sheep and bring it here," Ling Han said. Bright wool sheep. Yutong and the rest stared blankly. Bright wool sheep was only a demonic beast of body refining tier and there was nothing special about it. What did Ling Han want such a creature for? Ling Han smiled and said, "Bright wool sheep is the favorite food of the red-scaled dragon snake." Chen Pengju had not yet reached the conclusion. He dimly asked, "Why do we have to feed that great snake?" "Stupid." Zhu Zuyi immediately knocked him on the head. "If we place some kind of drug in the body of the bright wool sheep, then wouldn't it end up in the stomach of that great snake?" "Oh, that's right." Chen Pengju scratched his head. His suddenly enlightened expression caused everyone else to laugh loudly. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 49. Battling the Dragon Snake. Everyone proceeded to carry out their assigned tasks. Yutong and his group went off to hunt the bright wool sheep while Ling Han took out a variety of medicinal ingredients, preparing to concoct a particular drug. It was only an alchemy emperor like Ling Han who could handle medicinal ingredients well enough to be able to concoct a drug targeted specifically against a particular creature. The drug he was concocting now could be considered harmless to any other living creature, but for the red-scaled dragon snake alone, it was deadly. In many situations, alchemists were also poison masters. For example, the little poison lord, Yu Zheng. However, his ability was far, far beneath Ling Han's. Although the bright wool sheep was not a powerful demonic beast, its flesh was extremely delicious. It was not only the favorite prey of many other demonic beasts, it was also considered a delicacy for human beings. As a result, their population in the area dwindled. It was not an easy matter to actually find one. After a whole 3 days had passed, Yutong and his group finally returned. Chen Pengju was carrying a creature that looked like a mountain goat on his back. It had a gorgeous woolen coat that looked like the finest brocade. They had finally captured a bright wool sheep. Ling Han fed the drug he had concocted to the bright wool sheep before making a gash on one of its legs. He then threw it into the lair of the red-scaled dragon snake. The great snake's sense of smell was quite powerful. The smell of blood would definitely cause it to wake up from its deep slumber, and since the bright wool sheep was its favorite food, it wouldn't be able to hold back from coming out to enjoy another big meal even if it was already full. Why did they have to use a living prey? That's because each red-scaled dragon snake was very cautious by nature. Unless the prey was something it had killed itself, it would definitely not eat it. After Ling Han came out of the cavern, he retreated with others some distance away. They hid behind a boulder nearby so that the great snake wouldn't discover their presence once it came out of the cavern. Not long after, they felt the ground tremble beneath them, as if some colossal beast was going berserk nearby. It was the red-scaled dragon snake. Peng! A gigantic red-colored snake weaved out of the cavern's entrance as if it was an arrow shot from a bow. Its diameter was bigger than that of a bucket, and it was also extremely long. Whatever they could see of its body was already pushing close to 100 meters, yet there was still no sign of the end of its tail. There were two fine membranes protruding from the great snake's neck. Currently, the two membranes were trembling, producing a weird, woo-woo-woo, sound. Finally, the entire body of the great snake was out. Its total length was about 200 meters and its whole body was covered with crimson scales. Each scale was about the size of a barrel's lid. It seemed to have gone mad and was continuously ramming into obstructions in all directions. Its long tail was like a whip, shattering many of the surrounding boulders in the course of its rampage. How come that thing's not dead from the poison yet? Lu Dong and his group gasped in shock. They were completely unable to comprehend it. Duh, that's a demonic beast in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Moreover, it has inherited a shred of the dragon's bloodline, and has been acclaimed as a ruler among demonic beasts of the tier. How could it die so easily? Ling Han said, shaking his head. If it was that simple to kill it, he would not have needed to wait until he had reached the peak period of the 1st layer of element gathering tier to come here. Oh no, it's noticed us. That great snake had a very strong sense of smell, so even if Ling Han and the others had concealed themselves in a spot downwind of it, the snake had still discovered their presence. It immediately weaved its gigantic body and charged towards them. See, the great serpent's tongue flickered, and the two membranes at the sides of its neck trembled, producing a weird sound. A rotting stench wafted over. Yutong, let's join forces, we need to detain it. Ling Han did not feel fear at all. He simply drew his sword and threw himself forward. Lu Yutong did not respond. She simply followed Ling Han closely, and for the first time, drew her weapon of choice. She was also a sword user. The two of them worked together with their swords brandished in a dance, aimed at the red-scaled dragon snake. Theoretically speaking, Lu Yutong had also achieved the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so she should not be at a disadvantage in terms of power when facing this great snake. However, the red-scaled dragon snake possessed a thread of the dragon's bloodline, so whether in terms of brute power or defense, it was still stronger than any other being at the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Even Lu Yutong was not qualified to battle it head-on. It was a ruler of this cultivation tier, and only other rulers of the tier possessed the ability to battle it one-on-one. Ling Han possessed the 5-element origin nuclei and his power similarly exceeded those of the same cultivation level, so he did have a right to the name, ruler. The problem was that his current cultivation level was still too low. Even if the two of them were working together, they were still forced to jump and dodge in all directions, proving the great power this serpent possessed. Be patient, it's already poisoned, so it can't hold on for much longer. But we definitely can't allow it to flee, Ling Han said. Lu Yutong nodded. Ling Han used all his abilities, and every wave of his sword would form 4 flashes of sword chi. Pooh, 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 4 wounds appeared on the body of the red-scaled dragon snake. On the other hand, his actual sword itself didn't even manage to penetrate the scales of the great snake. This was the power of sword chi, and this was also why it was something that every self-respecting swordsman would revere greatly. And when they saw the 4 flashes of sword chi Ling Han had just displayed, Lu Dong and his group were completely stunned, their mouths agape, they were absolutely speechless. However, the great snake's counterattack was also extremely swift and fierce. Its tail whipped and the shattered rocks shot out at a terrifying force, causing bloody spots to continuously appear on Ling Han's body. Ling Han didn't even make a single sound of pain at this. On the contrary, he started to stimulate Lone Wolf's blood within his body. When the 5 elements origin nuclei within his dantian began rotating at a greater speed, causing his power to increase. At the same time, the circulation of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll allowed his wounds to begin recovering at an extremely rapid rate. The circulation of these two different techniques, along with the fierce battle he was now in, caused the origin power within Ling Han's body to be consumed at a very fast rate. For any other person to battle at his full strength, he might be able to last for about half an hour, but for Ling Han, 10 minutes was already his limit. But he had already long anticipated this situation and so prepared a large number of medium-level return origin pills for himself. Should he start feeling that his origin power was flowing out, he'd take one of the pills. There shouldn't be any problem for him to continue battling for about 20 minutes with his current supply of pills. They had to detain the great snake by all means. For he had concocted the drug to especially aim at the red-scaled dragon snake. The serpent had a yin nature, so he had prepared a large store of medicinal ingredients that possessed a yang nature or were of fire alignment, causing yin and yang within the snake's body to conflict, damaging the life force of the red-scaled dragon snake. But it was also very easy to cure this poison. As long as it dived into a river, using the water to extinguish the flames raging within its body, it'd be able to completely recover after 3 or 4 days by simply resting. Under the influence of its instincts, the red-scaled dragon snake would definitely go off in search of water, so they needed to stop it here by all means. If it wasn't for this, Ling Han would have had the whole group hide somewhere further away and wait for the red-scaled dragon snake to die before returning to collect their rewards. After the battle had persisted for a while, the great snake's initial rage passed and it became restless instead. It felt as if an inferno was raging within its body, causing it to feel the pressure of death closing in. It no longer attacked fiercely but its head turned around instead, intending to flee. "Where do you think you're going?" Ling Han quickly waved his sword in a slash. He had entered 7 Wind Mountains firstly for the Earth Dragon Grass, and secondly, for the inner core of this great serpent so that he'd be able to concoct the transcending origin pill. If he wanted to advance his cultivation level in a short period of time, he needed to depend on the external support of this medicinal pill. "Pa!" The great serpent gave a wave of its tail, creating a terrifying shockwave. Although its tail had not directly hit Ling Han, the shockwave produced caused Ling Han to fly backwards. The 9th layer of element gathering tier was indeed powerful. Ling Han felt rueful. The higher the cultivation level, the more difficult it was to skip cultivation levels when challenging someone. Element gathering tier was still fine, but once he reached gushing spring tier, even the difference of 1 layer would be an immeasurable gulf. If he, with a cultivation level of the 1st layer of gushing spring tier, battled against an opponent in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier, he'd be instantly obliterated in one move. There was no way he'd be able to prolong the battle for even slightly longer. Yutong produced a light whistle as her long sword freely waved like rain, and a high-level yellow-grade sword arts unfolded. Her attack was like rain, and effectively parried the red-scaled dragon snake's blow. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Tao. Chapter 50. A Breathtaking Sword. Ling Han and Yutong had already started taking pills like mad. The pills Ling Han had been taking helped him replenish his origin power while the ones Yutong had been taking were meant to speed up the recovery of wounds. A head-on clash with this kind of demonic beast was practically seeking death, and she had already sustained considerable internal injuries within a few short minutes of battle. Thankfully, the pills Ling Han concocted were of excellent quality and allowed her to maintain her battle prowess at her best condition. Furthermore, because of Lone Wolf's blood, her battle prowess was still on a soaring rise. Ling Han had taught it to her some time ago. With the increasing battle prowess she possessed further enhanced by the circulation of the Lone Wolf's blood, Yutong could just about handle a head-on clash with the red-scaled dragon snake. If the red-scaled dragon snake had not been poisoned, then the losers of this battle would definitely be Ling Han and Yutong. But things were different now. They only needed to hold on for 20 minutes. As the battle persisted, the red-scaled dragon snake became more and more frantic. The conflict between the yin and the yang in its body was becoming even more intense, and there were already many places on its body that had exploded. Green-colored blood splattered everywhere. It had a corrosive nature falling on the rocks littered around. The blood actually melted the rocks at an extremely quick pace. There was also poisonous gas floating around in the air that could easily poison and kill a martial artist in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. If it did not possess such awe-inspiring abilities, how could it be labeled the ruler of element gathering tier? Rulers were, of course, invincible. Unfortunately, it had encountered Ling Han. Ling Han and Lu Yutong had already taken antidotes, and the powerful poison only caused them to feel slightly dizzy, not having too much effect on their battle prowess. The red-scaled dragon snake could feel death approaching and began to attempt to flee recklessly. In its eyes, it only needed to solve the problem within its body, and then dealing with these two insignificant human beings would be a cinch. Lu Yutong was enraged too. She brandished her long sword like she was holding a rainbow in her hand, as if she was a battle goddess displaying her heroic beauty. The great serpent did its utmost to flee, while Ling Han and Lu Yutong did their utmost to stop it from fleeing. If they missed this chance, the red-scaled dragon snake would definitely not be fooled next time, and they'd have to wait until Lu Yutong broke through to gushing spring tear before coming again. A large river appeared some distance ahead. The red-scaled dragon snake seemed to understand that the river's water would cure its poison and instantly became energetic, increasing the speed of its escape. Even if it suffered attacks from Lu Yutong, it did not attempt to counterattack even once. It seemed to have made its decision to do its utmost to slip into the river. A flash of absolute determination crossed Lu Yutong's eyes as she raised her sword high up and lightly shouted, "One sword of heaven's martial arts determines the universe." Ziu! She waved her sword, and it was almost as if wielder and sword were as one, slashing towards the neck of the red-scaled dragon snake. Ling Han's expression changed and he shouted loudly, "Don't be reckless." This slash was much too powerful and the red-scaled dragon snake dared not receive it head-on. Otherwise, it was highly likely that the great serpent would be killed by this one slash. It gave a loud hiss, and the serpent's body quickly coiled in place, concealing its head within its coiled body to protect it. Pooh! The long sword lowered quickly in a slash, and a flash of sword chi was revealed, which actually chopped the body of the red-scaled dragon snake in two. Green blood instantly gushed out like a spring. The great serpent twisted all over the ground in agony. Close to 1/3 of its body near to its tail had actually been chopped off by this sword slash of Lu Yutong. Pa! Lu Yutong's delicate figure wavered, and she fell down towards the ground. Ling Han quickly leaped up to catch the icy beauty before she hit the ground. He frowned and said, "Are you crazy? You actually forcibly squeezed your origin nucleus to increase your own battle prowess. If it exploded, you'd lose your life." "I managed to form sword chi. Did you see, I formed sword chi," Lu Yutong said weakly, but excitedly. At that moment, there was only one thought in her head, and that was to obstruct the red-scaled dragon snake. She could not disappoint Ling Han. With the support of this conviction, she actually broke through her own limits and managed to form sword chi. "You silly girl, if you dare to do something like this again, I'll smack your behind." Ling Han lifted Lu Yutong onto his back. The red-scaled dragon snake's energy was now close to being completely spent. Although the river was not too far away, it could no longer reach it. A red flush appeared on Lu Yutong's beautiful, cold face, but she plastered her face onto Ling Han's back. Hearing the strong beating of his heart, her mind was empty of any stray thoughts. The red-scaled dragon snake was still twisting around on the ground, yet the extent of its movements was becoming smaller and smaller. Finally, it no longer made any movements. Yet Ling Han did not make any impulsive moves. A centipede dies but never falls down, and the serpent was extremely long. Moreover, this red-scaled dragon snake was considered within the ranks of kings. Big Brother Ling, Lu Dong and his group raced over. Their faces were filled with astonishment, and when they looked at Ling Han, it was as if they were looking at some kind of monster. How could they not be astonished? Although the red-scaled dragon snake had been poisoned, its battle prowess had not weakened. Ling Han actually managed to battle with it for such a long time. Even if the main attacking force had been Lu Yutong, this was still an unbelievable feat. If it had been them in his place, one whip of the great serpent's tail would probably be enough to make them all die in one go. "Is Miss Lu all right?" they asked. "She should be all right," Ling Han smiled. With an Alchemy Emperor like him nearby, as long as she still had one breath within her, there was no way she would die. He was just about to have Lu Dong and his group watch over her and the serpent while he enters the cavern to pluck the earth dragon grass when he suddenly spotted a few people coming out from the bushes on the river's banks. There were 6 people in total, and the one in the lead was a young man. The others were 5 men dressed all in black and seemed to be of different ages. From the looks of it, they were the lackeys of the young man. Ha 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 ha, it's an actual red-scaled dragon snake. The young man rubbed his hands and laughed loudly. That's why I said we should come over here and check things out when we heard the commotion. We actually encountered such a good thing. Young master's good fortune is as high as the sky. The 5 men in black said in unison, showing off their abilities of currying favor. Quickly carry this great serpent back for me. I'll let grandfather see how great I am. The young man immediately commanded. Understood. The 5 men in black walked towards where the red-scaled dragon snake was lying. The 6 of them were speaking amongst themselves as if they had completely not seen that Ling Han and the others were also here. Hey, we were the ones who killed that red-scaled dragon snake. Zhu Zuyi shouted loudly in anger. Li Hao had already drawn his saber, preparing to step forwards to stop him. Yet Ling Han raised one hand to stop him from advancing further, and said, smiling, you don't have to do anything. Li Hao and the others couldn't understand him. Could it be that Ling Han really intended to surrender the red-scaled dragon snake just like that? But Ling Han did not seem at all as if he was that kind of person. Previously, even though he had known Hang Zan had been the grandson of the 7th elder of Stone Wolf sect, he had still done as he had said and killed the man. His brow hadn't even twitched back then. When the young man on the other side saw this, his face was filled with an expression that told them this was something common to him. Because of his identity, it was absolutely normal for other groups to yield to him. Yet it was at this very moment that the situation changed drastically. The red-scaled dragon snake that seemed to have completely died actually coiled up. Its head shot out and bit one of the men in black, snapping him in half, whilst its body coiled and constrained the other 4 tightly. This was its final attack before death. As it gathered all its remaining strength to carry it out, it was extremely powerful. Ka ka ka, the sound of bones shattering continued for a long time. The 4 people who had been trapped in the snake's coiled body were instantly squeezed into a lump of flesh and blood, which had all mixed together into an indefinable lump. There was no way to identify who was who now. Meanwhile, the man the great serpent had bitten in half was only left with 2 legs that walked a few steps in different directions before they fell down with a pa. Pa. The red-scaled dragon snake once again lay down on the ground, and this time, it was finally dead.